Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're talking about a brand new series here on Hot Dog Flexer channel, the Hot Dog Flexer channel. Am I saying that right? I do not know. Anywho, this is a series where we will be doing a deep dive into decks of Yu-Gi-Oh's past. And what better place to start than a deck that has recently been terrorizing the meta? I know Fire King has kind of fallen out a little bit in favor of more pure Snake Eyes Fiendsmith, and Yubel Fiendsmith, etc. But Fire King can still do its thing here in 2024, thanks in large part to a lot of the new support. Some people may not realize this, but in the TCG, Fire King Island is also considered new support, at least to this, as it took a very long time. There's always a couple of cards that are like that. Fight for Patrick, I know, another one, that take a long time to eventually get to the TCG. But this was piloted by Scott Sheehan in 2014. This was what Fire King used to look like, and it was a lot different yet similar to the way the Fire King is today. You were less focused on swarming the board with a bunch of Link monsters. Obviously Link wasn't even around at the time, and you were more focused on controlling the board state as much as humanly possible, in large part due to Fire King high avatar Runics, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But without further ado, if there are any decks that you want me to feature on the channel, maybe a deck from 2013, 2016, 2017, even as early as probably like 2020, that's probably as close to the current format as I'll get, all the way back to GOAT format, and we have some decks already ready there for you. But without further ado, let's just jump into it, starting with, of course, Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear. Those who were not around back in this format may not remember how solid of an archetype Fire Fist was during this time period. I mean, it really was just like the best deck in every room that it was in for a very long time. And the synergies of Fire Formation Tenki, even a card like Fire Formation Tensu, which allows you to get an extra normal summon, worked in Fire King. Fire Formation Yugioh is another card that has good synergies with Fire King. Now this deck wasn't really running too many Fire Formations, it was just running the one Bear and the 3 Tenki, but just having free and searchable monster removal was really good. That's Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear. Now the next card we're talking about is going to be Coach Soldier Wolfbark. Now, this is another card people may not realize. I have to actually do a deeper dive. I'm pretty sure at one point this card was at 1 because of how good Fire King, Fire Fist, and these fire archetypes are. It seems like every 10 years. So in 2034, you better watch out, because it seems like every 10 years, fire becomes the new favorite Konami archetype. And Coach Soldier Wolfbark simply says you can target 1 level 4 Fire Beast Warrior monster in your graveyard, especially when its effects are negated. Remember back in the day when you would get a monster for free as a +1, but its effects were negated? Coach Soldier Wolfbark is like that, but it honestly is a free searchable rank 4. Now obviously you need some form of setup, but because of the way Fire King is, it's usually pretty easy to get cards in the graveyard. It's not as easy as it is now with cards like Fire King Avatar Corinne, Fire King Island, and even Fire King Alvarado. All of these cards weren't out yet, but it was still relatively easy to get your Fire Kings in the graveyard with a card like Fire King Avatar Yaksha, right? Outside of the Fire Kings, just send stuff. So it was actually not that hard to get cards in the graveyard. Plus the format was a little bit slower at the time, so you could like set a card and set maybe a couple of back row and be fine, right? And so then your opponent beats over your Barong, use, normal summon Wolfbark, special summon out the Barong, and the plays ensue. Speaking of which, we do have Fire King Avatar Barong at 3 copies. It's only at 1 in the current TCG. You really only need it at 1 because of how great the combos are, but you really wanted to see this card as early and as often as possible. You wanted to trigger its effect as early and as often as possible. During the next standby phase was actually, interestingly enough, it was always really slow. Until recently, when now it kind of feels like it was ahead of its time, just being able to search it ahead of, just because of how much how fast the game has gotten. As weird as this might sound, searching during the next standby phase is actually really good. Like, yes, Barong in and of itself in a vacuum is still slow because it searches after the next standby phase. It was destroyed, but just being able to do a full combo and then search a Barong afterwards, it's really, really good. They are running 2 copies of Fire King Avatar Garunix. Now, some of you might not know what this Fire King does. It just says if a Fire King monster is destroyed by card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. All the Fire King that are in this deck say that. I think the one that negates spells and traps, for whatever reason the name is escaping me. That card also has that effect. Kurin has that effect. If a Fire King faces a Fire King card is destroyed by card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. I don't believe the little guy has that effect. No, it does. Okay, cool. I know because I know the big one does. I know Rang Ball he does. Do the new ones? That's fun. That one doesn't. That one does not either. But a lot of these do have this effect. But this has another effect which says if this card is destroyed in your possession, so creature swap doesn't work as well, but it's destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, that's by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Fire King Avatar from monster from your deck. So obviously tutors like Mystic Tomato, Giant Rat, they had their place in the game. They're obviously not good anymore, but at the time they still had relevant play. And the fact of the matter was, like I said earlier, you could set this and maybe a bottomless trap hole. Your opponent, I don't know, would normal summon a Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear, send Fire Formation Tenki to the grave, pop Garunix. Garunix would special summon out another Garunix because it can also special summon itself out, similar to Mystic Tomato. And then your opponent would have to make a decision. Do I beat over it, which is obviously can't beat over that, or do I just let it sit there? Because if you beat over it, obviously you can flow into a card like Fire King Avatar Yaksha, which can pop a Barong, or even better, Fire King High Avatar Garunix. Now, we are running 3 copies of Fire King Avatar Yaksha. This card has kind of fallen out of favor. For those who played Fire King Cosmos, I don't want to do too deep of a dive in that because that's probably another deck we're going to talk about on this channel is Fire King Cosmos. This card was a huge part of it. This card was a huge part of it. This because of its level, but this because of its synergy with the Cosmo cards. But this also obviously synergized super well with Barong, super well with Fire King High Avatar Garunix. Now, this was the cover card of the original structure deck. I believe the new one is this card, Sacred Fire King Garunix. The Fire King High Avatar Garunix says, once per turn during the next standby phase, have this card destroyed by card effect, and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. If you do, destroy all monsters on the field. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Fire King from your deck except itself. So this does float into all of these, which is not the main reason we use it, but it is an interesting one because you can, if this does get beat over by battle, because 2700 is big, but it's not like, the size of Crazy Box, for example, but it's not as big as like a Blue Eyes White Dragon. So a lot of times you can find yourself in game states where you summon out this monster, it gets beat over by battle, you float into a Yaksha, and you pop the other one in your hand, and you keep the circle going. And that's really all you're trying to do. That's why you always ran 2. I did always see, because I played Fire King a lot at this time period, it's really what got me into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh play. I did see the list of 3 of these. And if you probably watch some of my older videos, deck profiles of Fire King, you'll hear me say what I'm about to say again. So some nostalgia's kicking in a little bit, which is you never want to see this card, want to have this card at 3. Because if you're in a situation where you're doing this over and over again, you're only ever going to have 1. And to get 1 on the field and have 1 in the chamber for next standby phase, you only really need 2. And it does kind of brick if you don't have the Yaksha in hand, especially back in the day without Fire King Island. So that's why 2 makes a lot of sense. 1 Thunder King Ryo, you might be like, why 1 Thunder King Ryo? Thunder King Ryo was at 1 at the time. And this was a really like control-focused archetype that really focused less on spamming the board with a bunch of Xyz monsters and Link monsters like today's deck, and really more controlling the board, controlling the game state. I know you might be thinking to yourself, Thunder King Ryo wouldn't get blown up by Fire King High Avatar Garunix. It's just similar to Bear, where if you see it, which actually also may have been at 1, which like if you see it in a simplified game, like this card in a very simplified game state is obnoxious with the way Yu-Gi-Oh is. 1900 attack is no joke. And actually being able to send itself to the graveyard to negate a special summon is super big as well. 1 copy of Book of Moon. Stop me if you heard this before. This, you might look weird at 1. This card was at 1. As a matter of fact, every card except this card, I believe, was at 1 at the time. Book of Moon, we know how good Book of Moon is. Circle of the Fire King does still kind of see play today, so you probably know what it does. This was the easiest way to get what the card's name is, right? Like, the card's name is Circle of the Fire King, right? Like, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get this card to special summon itself out in standby phase, blow the board up. Your opponent sets up a board, can't out this card, or if they try to out this card, you destroy it by card effect, special summon the other one out, the other one floats it to a chicken or into a barong or whatever, and then this one comes out, blows up the board again, right? Something to that effect is really what you're trying to do. And back in 2014, it was really hard to just like you could make a really good first turn board. It was really hard to recover. The recovery time in Yu-Gi-Oh is so much better now that this loop feels a little slow. But at the time, it was devastating. 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. This card, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 all the time. At the time, it was 3, which is why Fire, Beast Warrior, but especially Fire Beast Warrior was so stinking good. Forbidden Lance was huge for cards like Bottomless Trap Hole. I mean, obviously, also because it does say loses 800 attack, it does have a cool way of helping this card get over the Blue Eyes White Dragon or different cards like that, like just big beat sticks. I mean, obviously Towers Turbo started to come out. This card, actually, I don't think that's an out to Towers. This deck didn't have an out to Towers, but there were cards at the time. For whatever reason, I'm drawing a blank on like the best. Like, I know Inzektor, but Inzektor kind of got hurt. There was a lot of like really good synchro cards like Black Rose Dragon, Stardust Dragon, like Star Eater, which isn't a great example because this card also doesn't out Star Eater. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Forbidden Lance, it actually has kind of seen play recently because it's just such a unique ability, especially considering it's a spellbook of wisdom, but you get both effects for any monster, right? Which is really good. Mystical Space Typhoon does not negate. Onslaught of the Fire Kings. I was actually surprised to see this card in the main deck, but Scott Sheehan did top a regional with this, so he probably knows what he's doing. Me personally, I always noticed this card was really good going second because your opponent had to control the monster. It wasn't as good going first. However, in a slower game state, you were actually, as wild as this may sound, you were actually able to pass. Right? Because it says if only your opponent controls the monster. So you can't have a monster. You can't like T-set pass. You could kind of like T-set an Yaksha, pop the Barong in your hand, search an Onslaught, activate Onslaught, that type of thing, which is why at 3 is crazy. But this is also, with the way this deck is kind of built, with the MSTs obviously in it as well, Rekindling, it actually can go pretty fast with its tempo, so that can help. What also is really cool about Onslaught is you can actually just summon out like a Barong, normal summon Bear, or Wolfbark, or Yaksha, and make a rank 4, right? Making it an Exton Knight, right? Which is really, really cool. 2 copies of Rekindling, because it's Rekindling. This card was busted. That's a soul charge for 200 defense. Fire Monsters, it's crazy. This card is slow now. That's why it's at 3, doesn't see play. 1 Bottomless is similar to the Book of Moon, Thunder King Ryo, and the Torrential Tribute. They were at 1 at the time. That's why they're only running 1. Generation Shift is some spice. I'm not going to lie. But that's why Scott Sheehan did so well. Target 1 face-up monster you control, destroy that target, then add a card with the same name. So obviously, this allows for the Circle of the Fire King shenanigans to happen really stinking fast. Memory of an Adversary. This card, I did play test it. I personally didn't like it in my Fire King deck, but I do see where it comes into play, where it does say when your opponent monster declares an attack, you can take damage equal to that attacking monster's attack, and then if you do banish that monster, and then during the end phase, your opponent's next turn, special summon that monster to your side of the field, because like I said, Fire King High Avatar Runix has a tough time outing like the really big beat sticks, because at 2700 attack, there's actually a lot of monsters that have more than that. As a matter of fact, I just realized we can do this search right now. 2700, more than 2700 attack. Right, it's 52 results, right? And obviously this is newer, right? So there was less at the time, but the point still remains, a lot of cards can just beat over this card in battle. So that's where Memory of the Adversary comes into play. Mind Crush is really cool because of its interaction with Barong. We can search obviously Yaksha, any of our Fire King cards, and we will have a card in our hand that's extra, and we could get rid of our opponent's card, especially if they had just searched it, like in the mirror match. Tenki, search Yaksha, Mind Crush, calling Yaksha, see you later, alligator. And then 2 copies of Skill Drain, because Skill Drain is going to Skill Drain. What's really cool about Skill Drain in this deck specifically, and I'm curious as to why this deck's not running rank 8s, because there is a possibility it could make a rank 8. Like, I don't know, it's just running 2 Crazy Box instead of like Felgrand or something like that. Because with Skill Drain up, you can make these 2 into a rank 8. Now, obviously, you probably wouldn't want to, because these 2 in a simplified game state are actually pretty good, because they can special summon themselves back out, right? Like, if you have Skill Drain face up, your opponent Dark Holes the board, which I believe Dark Hole was legal, even though it's not in this deck. Your opponent Dark Holes the board, this card will come back, even though, because it activates in Grave, so it's cool there. Warning is another card. I don't know why I didn't mention it with Torrential, Book, Thunder King, and Bottomless. That was at 1 at the time. But this card was a staple. This card was in every single deck. Honestly, you would just run these 3 cards in almost every single deck. But that's it for the main deck. 40 card main deck. For the side, 2 copies of DD Crow for the mirror match. This is really good, because this card, if it's not, it's to be in the graveyard, special summon itself back out. It's not in the graveyard, can't come back out. Don't have to explain it. There was probably a deck that was hurt by this a lot, because the DNA Surgery is a low-key underrated card, even in today's meta. There are a lot of like the Fiend archetype, the Dragon archetype, even like Rika Sun Avalon, that require, like, their link monsters require materials to be a certain type. And so DNA Surgery, just switching them all, can actually be really, really big. Dust Tornado, this was probably like the last year Dust Tornado was relevant. Imperial Iron Wall, because as I mentioned previously, DD Crow is really good against this deck. So you just activate Iron Wall. What are they supposed to do? Light Imprisoning Mirror. What was the light deck? Was it Stellar Knight? Constellars? I'm trying to remember. I can't. But Light Imprisoning Mirror. There's a lot of really great light decks in the game's history. If you guys want me to feature that on the channel, let me know in those comments down below. And then Overworked, destroy each monster whose attack is higher than its original attack. Just in case you bump into a deck like that, like Cyber Dragon does that actually pretty well with cards like Limiter Removal. And so this can help with that as well. To the extra deck, as I mentioned previously, 2 copies of number 85 Crazy Box. For those who don't realize, this is the best card this is actually the best card that's ever been printed. So this card cannot attack once per turn. You can detach one material, roll a 6-sided die, apply the result. Half your life points. It's not good. Draw a card. Also amazing. Your opponent discards a card. Also amazing. Literally 2 +1s in a row. Negate the effects of one face-up card on the field until the end of this turn. So you can negate its own effects and attack with 3k or something else. Destroy 1 card in the field. Synergy. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, if I can wiggle my way to it, destroy this card. This is the 6th thing. I don't know why this person was running 85 Crazy Box. Crazy Box was a meme. Is definitely one of the best meme cards of all time. Running it at 2 is insane. But I don't disagree with running 2 copies of number 101 Silent Honor Arc. Honor Arc was the bane of this deck's existence. Being able to target a special summon monster your opponent controls and just make it material is super great. Also, it has that neat little protection effect, which a lot of people forgot about, which was that if the face-up card be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can just attach a material instead. Super really awesome, so it makes sense that this is at 2. Mice Stroke, this was just a rank 4 staple. Just being able to Book of Moon an opponent's monster. Nice. Cowboy for game, if you know, you know. Ouroboros, I'm going to be honest. This one's pretty difficult to make, but you can definitely make it with Rekindling. Wolf Bark after an Onslaught. There are ways to do it, but it's definitely going to take some setup. Evilstorm Exciton Knight was also a staple. Really obnoxious card. It's just too slow now. It's like a bad Zeus. If you know, you know. Diamond Direwolf was another staple of this deck. Just being able to pop your High Avatar Garunix and your opponent's card. It's coming back later. So many great things. Pop up a wrong. You're getting a Surge popping a card. This card was fantastic. This card should honestly be at like 3 in Crazy Box at 1. Digesto Emerald, another rank 4 staple. Bujentai Kagukshi. Just says the top 5. It just loads up your rekindling. Okay, I saw this card on the deck list and I was like, what is this card doing in here? But it does require 2 level 4 Beast Warrior types, which is really easy for this deck to make. Bujin! That's right! Bujin was really good at the time. Oh, that's right. That's what this card's for. I don't know. I'm sorry. And this card is also good against that deck. This card is also good against that deck. This card is okay against that deck now that I think about it. So, shout out Bujin. Anyway. Right of the Fire Fist Tiger King, if you've played any level 4 Beast Warrior deck, since this card has existed, you know what this card does. If you do not, Google it. No, like honestly, like it's crazy if you don't know what this card does, but when it's Z summon, you just set a fire formation, so it's literally a free search. I mean, obviously there's a lot of fire formations you can set, but you can set a Tenki and go from there. It has another effect. You can detach a material and negate the evasive effects of all monsters currently on the field except Beast Warriors to the end of your opponent's next turn. That's pretty cool. And this card is going to send 3 fire formation spell traps you control to the graveyard, special summon 2 level 4 Beast Man. Fire Fist is so good. If you guys want me to feature Fire Fist on this as well, I can do that. There's actually been a few different Fire Fist lists that have made headwaves, and then Abyss Dweller. No way you don't know what this card does. So let me know what you guys think in those comments down below. If there are any archetypes that you want to talk about from any time period, please let me know in those comments down below. I'll take a look at it and get it set up on Dueling Book. If you guys want to see me duel with this type of deck against like the current rated format, I'm obviously going to have to make some tweaks if I ever stumble upon a deck that has banned cards like Mr. Maximus C. I could probably just like run Molded Charmy or whatever. I don't know. Please let me know in those comments down below. If you like this stuff, make sure you let me know by clicking that like and subscribe button. But most importantly of all, have a good day.